Panel 1. Audio approaches to accessible comics. Image, a black and white drawing of sound entering an ear. Text, audio description. Panel moderator. Thomas Reed. Panelists. Chad Allen. Rick Boggs. Charity Pitcher Cooper. Wale Subri.
So it looks like Thomas has had to rejoin, so I'm sure we're just having some tech problems. In the meanwhile, let's go ahead and have Charity and Chad kick us off with who you are and your quick audio descriptions of yourself, please.
Absolutely. Since my mic's on, I'll just jump in here and go first. My name is Charity Pitcher Cooper, and I'm here in my cluttered home office, i.e. my living room. I am a light-skinned woman, and I have straight brown hair with heavy bangs. I am wearing my reading glasses and a very prominent pair of blue headphones with silicone red fox ears on them. I work as the project manager for UDescribe, which is an accessibility tool to add audio descriptions to YouTube videos. So I train hundreds of new audio describers a year, people who have generally never heard of audio description, all the way through to people who are professional audio describers who want to use the tool for personal projects or sometimes even for paid projects. And so that is my background here on the panel.
Thank you, Charity. Chad. Oh, you are muted.
Yep.
Oh, I unmuted you. You're good to go.
Hey everyone, my name is Chad Allen. I am an artist that happens to be blind. I am a 40-something male with fair complexion. I have a mustache and beard, brown eyes. I am wearing my Perspective Two Blind Brothers t-shirt, and there is a painting of the Yosemite Falls behind me. And then the reason that I am here today is obviously to promote, accessible comics. I have been involved in a project since late 2015, early 2016, called Unseen, which I am the creator of. And it is an audio drama about a blind assassin. And I was given the opportunity to have it on display at the Exploratorium Museum up in San Francisco in 2019 for a exhibit on identity. And I also am going to have the opportunity to have it on display at the Palo Alto Art Center coming up in September for another event. It's been a wonderful experience. I've worked in multiple mediums. I've been a competitive tap dancer as a child. I was a fine artist. I am a writer, and I'm also a magician.
Great. And now let's hear from Wale.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. My name is Wale Subri. You can call me Wally or Wale, whatever is easier for you. I identify as blind, and coming at you guys from New York City, also the unceded lands of the Lenape, Canarsie, and Rockaway peoples. My image description is as follows. I'm a Middle Eastern man in my mid-30s with olive skin and brownish hazelish eyes. And I have long, dark, curly hair that I've been growing for about a year and a half. I used to use the excuse that it was pandemic hair, but I've actually been doing it on purpose. But I have it tied up in a ponytail today to look presentable. It's also very humid, so my hair is a little bit frizzy. I'm wearing a long sleeve button-up shirt that has black and white horizontal stripes, and currently sitting in a bedroom with a wall behind me. As a professional, I work for the New York City Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, and I'm a digital accessibility coordinator. And as I said before, I identify as blind. I'm a pop culture enthusiast. I'm an audio description enthusiast, and I like comics.
Hey, can you all hear me?
We can.
Yes,
Good
we
job.
can hear you.
Good job here, Thomas.
Can you see me too?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I apologize for that. I don't know what was happening, but I had to restart my machine and everything was crazy, but forgive me.
Just
So-
a quick note, Thomas.
go
This is
ahead.
Emily speaking. We're still trying to contact Rick Boggs, who I believe is on, but may be signed in not under a name that's recognizable to us. Rick, if you are here and hearing this, can you either use the raise hand function, or you can just message in the Q&A that you're here, and then we'll know what your name is, so we can get you up there too.
So was that Chad
Thanks.
speaking just now that when I came in?
That was Wale.
Oh, that was Wale. I'm sorry. Sorry, Wale. So can I take it over or what?
Please do take it over, and we'll try to get Rick in, and I'll let you know when Rick is here.
Okay, so was Wale the only one who did his intro?
Sorry, Wale, Chad, and Charity.
Okay, all right. Well, damn.
Sorry, Thomas.
No, I apologize to you and to everyone else because, greetings everyone. And, I'm excited. I was really excited about it. So I was like trying to get this machine going. I'm really happy to be here amongst the cool, creative people and those of us who care about access. So honestly, I feel like I'm with my people. So let me just run down and do my introduction, my self-introduction. So my name is Thomas Reed, and I'm the host and producer of Read My Mind Radio, which is a podcast featuring compelling people impacted by all degrees of blindness and disability. I dedicate a significant amount of episodes to the topic of audio description, including critiquing, interviewing people within the industry on all different levels. I'm also a voice talent, and I've provided AD consultation and narration for multiple projects, including some that are on Netflix. I'm a brown-skinned Black man with a smooth-shaven bald head, a goatee, and dark shades. I'm wearing a Black Panther t-shirt. In light gray letters, it says Wakanda Forever with the arms crossed and the Wakanda salute. So you could say I'm dressed for the occasion. I'm seated in my vocal booth in the Poconos, which is about 90 minutes west of my beloved Bronx, New York. My pronouns are he and him. So let me pass the mic. Let me see, do we have Rick available yet?
He is joining us very shortly, just having a tech problem too, but he is on the way.
Excellent, excellent, excellent.
So I would just go ahead and begin the panel, and as soon as he's
Okay.
on, we'll let you know, and then we can catch him up with an intro.
Excellent, excellent. So, when it comes to audio description or making content accessible to those who are blind or low vision, I think we probably would agree that starting from the perspective of the consumer is essential. So Wale, now I know you can approach this conversation from different angles, but I'm going to ask you to focus on mainly as a consumer. So why don't you start to talk a little bit about your personal history with comics and your experience over the years accessing them and other graphical content.
Absolutely. Thank you, Thomas. So my experience, I'm a 36-year-old male, by FYI. My experience begins back when I was in college, and I was interested in comics, but I couldn't read them because I didn't have access to them. One of my friends was really into comics and started reading some to me. We read some classical favorites like Watchmen and Sandman, and that was just such a wonderful experience to be able to consume that content in an accessible way. Specifically Watchmen being one of, it's touted as one of the best comic books of all time, and that really just got me into that world. From there, I started exploring audio as a medium. So I started listening to some audiobooks and some recordings of, Edgar Allan Poe poetry and some books like White Fang and things like that. which eventually, that same friend that read comic books to me let me know that there was this company called Graphic Audio that was creating audio adaptations of comic books, DC comic books. And this was back probably in like 2008 or 2009, maybe 2010. And so I started buying them. They were on CD at the time. And, they would come like maybe like 4 or 5 CDs to a volume. And some of the stories that I listened to were Infinite Crisis, 52, I think Sons of Krypton. So, it has the DC characters that you'd be familiar with, like Superman and Green Lantern and Wonder Woman. And what was cool about them is, I only mentioned that they're audio adaptations, but they have a full cast, right? So each character has a unique voice. They have a full score. So there's music. There were sound effects beyond just like footsteps and doors opening and closing. There were like special effects. So it was really immersive and engaging and just fun to listen to. And they were, taken from the graphical novel adaptations. So, there would be a narrator kind of describing the story as they would if you were reading it as a book, right? But then the characters would voice their own quotes, and there would be sound effects to kind of give that experience of a scene. Actually, their motto or tagline used to be a movie in your mind, and that's what they tried to create, and it was fun. Unfortunately, I don't think that they have the rights for DC Comics anymore. So those that I mentioned, if you go on the Graphic Audio website, those stories are no longer available, but they might be available on Amazon as CDs. From there, I, in around 2010, I started getting into the world of podcasts, and I discovered Moonlight Audio Theater, which creates audio theater productions similarly with a full cast, music, sound effects. Sometimes they were even just recorded live performances of plays. And while it wasn't comic book focused, it was still an audio medium that really gave a lot, just a lot of ideas of what could be out there, and how comics could be made more accessible. And just on top of that, some of those podcast episodes were you recorded using binaural sounds. So if you wore headphones, you could actually sort of hear things in a 3D space as if you were almost experiencing a live experience of some sort. So that was a lot of fun. Then, my experience kind of goes on to like Netflix, and when they started audio describing shows like Daredevil and what was that show again? I forgot actually.
Jessica Jones.
Jessica Jones, yes. Yeah. Jessica Jones and the Defenders and all of those. That was fun. To now, I've had some experiences on Audible. There are some Marvel audio experiences on Audible. There's X-Files, similarly with music and sound, and it has the original actors actually from the X-Files series.
Very cool. Very cool, sir. Okay, well, great. Thank you so much, Wale. What I think we want to do next is to, do we have the Unseen queued up? The Unseen demo?
We do.
Okay, let's go to the demo, and then I can bring in Chad. So Chad, you can get ready, sir.
Thank you.
Afsana
Something happened.
through a series of air vents on all fours. As she passes, the transmitter in her ear directs her to the roof of the building. Afsana is near the top of the ductworks, crouched while watching the sunset. Her eyes are closed, but she feels the warmth of the sun on her face. We see the moon between the vents. By her feet, are a series of schematic drawings in the dust of the duct. The earpiece is buzzing with data, and she assesses the information as she plans out her next several objectives. We see the drawings have been wiped away as Afsana hoists herself onto the roof. A pipe along the side of the building allows her to climb down to the ground. Troops are moving in the opposite direction, and she moves unseen. Afsana runs, but the outline of her body is nearly impossible to see, like a fingerprint on a piece of glass.
Excellent. Very nice. Very nice. So that was a sample of Chad Allen's Unseen. So this symposium today is all about adapting comics for blind and low vision readers, yet Chad, you're a content creator who's starting from a non-visual place. So can you talk a little bit about your approach to making comics?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I think we all start as consumers, and eventually probably get inspired to come up with a way to have your own ideas expressed. As a kid, I was sighted, so I enjoyed comics very much. It's funny, I also remember I received as a gift one year something from Peter Pan Audio, which is in another old audio comic interpretation that was made in the late 70s, early 80s. And it came with a small 45 record and the comic book illustrated. And you would put the record on and the beeps would follow you from panel to panel. And then those panels would be performed by different actors. And the one that I had as a child was Spider-Man Meets the Wolfman. And it was about an astronaut that found a moon rock. And he turned it into a pendant that he wore around his neck. And when the moon was full, he would turn into the Wolfman. And Spider-Man needed to deal with that situation before he destroyed the city. So, that was kind of subconsciously in my head, for a long time, till it started to resurface. I went blind as a result of retinitis pigmentosa, so slowly but surely, and connected with the blindness community, became very knowledgeable in the skills of blindness, and pursued my art as best I could at the time. This was mostly magic and fine art that I was doing then, but eventually that evolved into writing. And I thought about that comic book that I had was as a kid and wanted to try and, play it around with that idea myself. So I can also used to play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and different kinds of role playing. So character development was something that I was very comfortable with. I started with the character and then I created the world around her. I knew that she was going to be blind. The first attempt at writing, she was male and I changed it to female. And then as a result of a lot of the political things that were going on in the world, I wanted to play with making her Afghani, and which also I think as an artist is a good thing to do, to put these kind of Easter eggs of sorts into your work, things that you find interesting, things that you want to learn yourself more about, so that it drives you to keep moving forward. So I was a history major in college, spent a lot of time researching, and then slowly but surely started gleaning ideas through that. I also, missed comics very much because I wasn't able to access them, and there was a lot of, lack of availability. But once I went into the movie theater and was able to experience a Marvel movie with audio description, I remember it very clearly. One of my favorite characters was Doctor Strange. So to be able to reconnect with that world again was a very a meaningful experience for me. And I kept thinking, well, if I can do it in this format, what's to say it can't be done, you know, in a more readily available way, like an audio drama. And so things started to evolve, and eventually, you know, people started to take notice of the project, and here we are.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Rick Boggs. I'm glad you're with us, Rick. I'm going to ask you this question, but then take a moment before you answer the question to give us your introduction, if you would, please. But I will ask you the question because you are someone who has been producing audio description for probably about 20 years or so. Can you talk about the experiences making AD for film and television, live performances, and all of that that can help make a medium like comics accessible? But again, please give us your introduction as well.
Almost all of your question until the last couple of words there, the critical part of it.
Okay, so really, I want you to talk about your experience within audio description and make, you know, all the stuff that you have done within audio description, whether it be films, live performances, and all of that, and what we can kind of take away in terms of making comics accessible.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And, always happy to be with you, Thomas. I am privileged to participate in this, and what a wonderful collection of intelligent human beings have been gathered here. Kudos to Paul K. Longmore Institute for putting on this kind of a thing for a subject matter that might not get as much attention as it really deserves. And I think, but I'll do my introduction first, as you said. So Rick Boggs here in Los Angeles. And, let's see, I guess we're doing the audio description, self-descriptions.
Yes, sir.
I'm a, 58-year-old guy, so I got some gray in my brown hair, and, about 5'10", 150 pounds, I'm pretty cash today. I was working out at the gym this morning and never went and switched, and, working at home, not doing the formal attire. So trying to remember what t-shirt this is, but some kind of promo painted t-shirt kind of thing. I'm a sort of a thinner, wiry guy, and I clean shaven in general, and so that's kind of where I'm sort of casual for the event. I think if it was in person, I'm comfortable wearing dress clothes. I like wearing suits and ties and that kind of stuff. So that's how I would be dressed if we were in person. But doing the home thing, it's a little more cash today. As far as my disposition and relationship to blindness and to the topic at hand, I am, totally blind since 1968 when I was 5 or 6 years old, after 7 eye surgeries for detached retinas. No one knew why they were tearing apart. And some now world-renowned specialists, in those days they were young, ambitious doctors, up-and-comers, flew to UCLA to do surgeries on my eyes, and ended up coming up with a couple of terms for diagnosis based on symptoms. They really didn't know what it was, high myopia, progressive myopia. They had different names for it. But no one really knew why the retina's detached. And in some kind of either routine or eye infection, for some reason I ended up, I do recall actually what it was. Kind of an interesting topic. I was with a woman for many years, and we were going to have children, and she became concerned that my children might be blind. And I couldn't tell her yes, no, or maybe, since I didn't know why I was blind anyway. And this is now when I'm 29 years old. So I went to an eye doctor, Dr. Mimi Chang, who looked at all my history and surgeries and all that stuff, and was blown away by the celebrities that I had apparently been worked on. And so she encouraged me to go back to the doctors that had done surgery all those years ago, which I did. And they, ophthalmologists, Dr. Eifrig at University of North Carolina, Dr. Strasma at USC and UCLA, Dr. Pettit, a large retina researcher, and and talk to
Hey,
them.
Rick,
They were very, yes.
This sounds like a great story, but I just want to make sure we have time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
for
Yeah.
the
So
comic
sorry.
part.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
friend.
Thanks. Yeah. Sorry. I got off on a tangent there. Sorry about that. Anyway, being blind that many years, your relationship. All right. Audio description. Look, I've been a part of a lot of research and about description, a lot of questionnaires, been privy to research done by the Video Description Research and Development Center. And a person's relationship to their blindness absolutely impacts their relationship to audio description in general. And naturally, we could talk about how that fits with whatever's being described, whether we're talking about a museum, a cruise ship, or in this case, comics. And I can tell you as a young kid, my brother, younger brother, Kevin, read the comics to me. We'd buy comic books, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, and he would describe the images and the pictures. And I knew, what the words were written, he would read those, but then there was so much more than just the words, right? The comics are graphic. I got into audio description 2001 and was very fortunate to get an opportunity to start describing for broadcast television in 2002. Been doing it ever since. Some pretty major broadcasting cable networks have been serving them for all these years. Made it my mission to include blind people in the production and determine the quality of description. That was really as an actor and voiceover artist for many years, and long sort of history as a creative history as an artist in many ways, acting, voiceover, music, producing commercials, radio DJ, and degree in broadcasting and music and all that kind of stuff. Had a record label when a captioner told me I should get in description because I was doing advocacy work with WGBH during the 90s. What my experience in the entertainment industry was that people with disabilities were getting short shrift, and I was able to present that one time in 2004 at a collective bargaining agreement session. So what I'm saying is that impacted the way that I run the audio description company. My company, Audio Eyes, has been describing since 2002, and has one of the top few shares of broadcast description that there is. But really, what interests me these days, after doing this 20 years, isn't so much the same old movie, the same old TV series, the same old whatever, but the special projects, doing the Blue Man Group, doing shows, independent films like No Ordinary Hero, where there's comics involved in the movie, some of the content. And I really wanted to bring a sample of that today. I couldn't pull it together in time, unfortunately, but maybe I'll make it available on our YouTube channel so you can see how we did it. But the movie was partly done in comic book style. And then there were deaf characters that were signing, there were speaking characters that were, it was quite an incredible mix to try to figure out how to describe. And my business partner, Terry Grossman, and also Jack Patterson, and I just sort of became enamored with the difficult challenges in description. What's difficult, and how can we make it work? And we came up with a couple of concepts for comics. We described some graphic novels that was related to this work, and one is kind of a variant on audio description, and we adhere to the standards published by the American Foundation for the Blind. But those standards have to be modified depending on what the medium is that you're describing. And there are kind of principles of audio description that I have taught through the Described Caption Media Program, DCMP, and the website dcmp.org. There are webinars still there, archived, that you can see, where we talk about general principles of audio description. I will say, though, that comics, like other special genre, require kind of modifications and adaptations to the specific application and the design of audio description. And comics in particular, because the graphic images help tell the story in a nonverbal way. Yes, there's text, but if you just read the text, and it's interesting, my son, Sean, who's 13, the first graphic novel he ever read, he read to me aloud. But he even noticed, I wouldn't get the story if he just read me the words on the page. You have to understand not only what's being shown in terms of this character is doing this, like who's doing what or whatever, But more than that, the style, the way that they're drawn, the way that the action is illustrated, the nature, the color, the technique, the aesthetic of the graphic images contributes to the story. The character of the person is portrayed in image rather than in word. And to have that described is super challenging, because a lot of times if you're reading something that is that doesn't exist in the natural world, when we, for example, describe the Star Trek series, Discovery, you have to come up with, how do you describe something when you don't have any time, or you don't want to make a novel out of your description every time. And yet it's something that you can't just say it's a car, because it's something that doesn't exist in the real world. So comics present this challenge. And there's, it would be pretty hard to try to, to teach it here, but I can suffice it to say, we came up with variants on how to describe and changing some of the basic rules and principles of description in order to do that as one way to approach it. And then finally, the other way is by soundscape. If you can match a soundscape, and we have a blind engineer who's just a master editor. He can compete with anybody, as some well-known filmmakers have told me. Chris Snyder, who can create sounds and soundscapes to accompany a version of audio description and voiceover and a telling of the words. So you have three things. You have voices that you cast specifically that are reading the text that's on the page. You have additional audio description that might be fragments, or might be a little more literary or sort of artistic or stylistic than rather super literal, accurate description that we would use for TV or film. And then you use a soundscape, which is a combination of music, digital sound processing, and or effects that we use to try to choose the color and nature and tone of the images that are being portrayed. So that's my really long, inefficient explanation of sort of where I came from and what I like about this and what we did about it.
Thank you, sir. No, I think those last words. You're gonna have some more time when we get to the best practices, I think, to bring some more of that. So I want to bring Charity in. Charity, with your work that you described, I imagine that you have had opportunities to really hear back from consumers. So I got a two-parter for you.
Yeah.
What feedback have you gotten from the user community that could provide some value to adapting comics? That's the one, and I'll give you both. Do you want both at one time? All right.
You may have to repeat the second one, because I sometimes get a little lost after I've been talking a while. So
no problem.
So
why don't you just start with the first one? I'll jump in when you're done.
Start with the first one.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I would say one, You Describe came out of the VDRC, the Video Description Research Center. And it's an amazing program that allows anybody with a microphone and a computer to add audio description to YouTube videos. And we do not pretend that we are professional audio description, although we do have some amazing professional describers. JJ Hunt has one of the most viewed and requested videos at You Describe, which is an AD version of Childish Gambino's This Is America, which is incredible. And you should check that out at youdescribe.org. Again, JJ Hunt is the describer, and it's Childish Gambino's This Is America. But what we usually do are the kind of videos, the kind of content that would be left undescribed. And a lot of that content is entertainment. Most of our descriptions that are done are actually educational. They're done by TVIs, but our requests for content are almost exclusively entertainment. We have a lot of requests for funny cat videos, right? Cat videos are the currency of the internet. And these are very brief videos that get traded and get sent out. We have one describer who only describes like 3 to 4 second videos, the kinds of videos that you would send as a react to a text, and he describes them. He has over 100 described videos of these very short 2 or 3 second bits. We get a lot of asks for movie trailers, which are especially difficult to describe because they are often very rapid fire images with a big, heavy score and a lot of soundscape that there aren't a lot of pauses in to make descriptions for. Because while the movie will be audio described, the trailer isn't. And people want to see the content. They want to be excited about the movie. One of my very favorite describers is a woman, Melissa Hope, and she's a professional scriptwriter. And she did one of the most beautiful pieces of audio description that I have seen. It was an intro for Picard, which is a Star Trek franchise. And it's a very poignant, very sort of slow moving, image rich trailer for that series. And I think her description is all of 8 sentences long, and it is just on point and brilliant. And that was very beloved. So I would like to say to content creators that there is a huge demand for this kind of work, for some kind of non-visual translation of comics. And every kind of comic that you can think of, people want access to.
Very cool.
So what about the second part?
So the second one, yeah, well, shout out to JJ Hunt and Melissa Hope, 2 great professionals. I know them both and they're very cool. But I know you work with some novices and you help them, right? You help them begin that process of describing. So what are some of the suggested techniques for getting started?
So for getting started, one, we ask people to pick things that are manageable. And as people think about how they're going to start, as content creators think about how they're going to start translating comics into a non-visual form, my big suggestion would be to start small. When we ask people as brand new novices to describe something, we ask them to start with a 2 to 3 minute video, no longer than that. And the reason for that is that when you are creating the entire description yourself, you're doing all 3 parts. You are writing the script, you are the voice talent, and then you are also the editor. And of course, a professional describer team, those things are usually pieced out, to people who are like fantastic editors, right? People who are fantastic voice talent, people who are professional script writers. And at UDescribe, you do it all yourself. And what we hope is that you will come up with something that is, if not the most elegant, fun and serviceable, and that really invites people into that video, and that your personality, your love for the content is going to shine through. And that's the other big thing that I suggest. But if you're starting as a new describer, that you describe content that excites you, that you're super interested in. And that kind of excitement really makes for thoughtful, meticulous describers. And we used to get maybe 1 to 3 audio descriptions a week. And now I think our record was we had 125 videos posted in 1 week. It used to be that I could watch every audio description. I could view every video and give feedback. Now there are too many. I can't watch them all. People are putting up entire movies. I do not have time to quality check an entire movie. But once people have done 5 to 10 audio descriptions and gotten used to the sound of their voice, gotten used to the fact that they have, maybe a local accent, that they really love creating audio description and are good describers.
Very cool. I'm going to make an audible here. Wale, I want to go to you before I bring in this other subject. Can you talk about some of your thoughts and experiences with both existing platforms and other mediums that could enable comics and facilitate access?
Absolutely. So I think there's more tools available to us that maybe weren't available, 10 years ago, or even maybe 5 years ago, in terms of producing. There's digital audio workstations that are accessible, such as Logic, and if you don't want to pay for that, there's GarageBand, right? There's Audacity, and all these other audio production softwares that folks can use to create audio description. There are also tools for us as blind folks to get the information that we need, right? Visual interpreting surfaces, so that we can figure out what's in the video that we're trying to describe, or if it's our own video, we hopefully know what's in it. Or if, So, but in terms of maybe some other ideas, using what's out there is also never a bad start, right? I'm thinking about just web pages with images that have all text, right? That could be simple, and you could also do that on social media, right? You can do that on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, post images of pages and describe the panels and the text. Going beyond that, there are other social media platforms that are more interactive, like Clubhouse, which is purely audio, and you could probably create a room on there and just start reading comic books to folks, right? And describing the images in them. So that's also a thing, and I could see that actually becoming more, just becoming somewhat successful on Clubhouse, because it's an audio medium. So I could actually see not just blind folks showing up to that, but also folks that are sighted and just are listening in and maybe doing something else. I mentioned graphic audio earlier, and I hope I'm not wrong in saying this, but I once heard that like graphic audio is their main market are truck drivers, right? Which was funny to me. But people who are sighted also need to consume audio. So I could see Clubhouse being, a good medium for that. One more medium that I think is not on a lot of folks' mind when it comes to audio description or comics or even accessibility. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. And I haven't explored it too much yet, but it's TikTok, actually. TikTok is a medium that allows you to create and edit your own videos. You can add text to them. You can add voiceovers to them. You can add voiceovers to other people's videos. You can take somebody's video and stitch it, right? And so now we get into a place where there's a potential for us to be adding audio descriptions to social media posts, or we can have, pages up on, you can add images to your video. Instead of having an actual video, you could just put up an image on screen and describe that, right? That could be a page of the comic from comic books. And finally, I think going back to older kind of existing mediums, I think PDFs are notorious on the internet for just being PDFs and for not being accessible, but it is possible to make an accessible PDF, right? Or an ebook. So there is that route that folks can take where they can actually just make the whole comic book accessible as a digital document of some sort.
Thank you for that. And yes, truck drivers are definitely long-haul truck drivers are definitely consuming audio description movies as well. So, and I love that Clubhouse idea. Chad.
Hey, Thomas.
Yes.
Thomas, this is Emily. Can I make a brief interruption for an access note?
Absolutely.
A note for our captioner and anybody using captioning, there's a big delay. It's still quality service, but there's a big delay. So Lisa, I'm not sure if there's any way to fix that problem. I think the panel can proceed. It's just a delaying about a minute behind. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you. So Chad, what are some of your thoughts about developing best practices to help content creators make accessible comics? And by all means, share anything specific from your own work.
Thank you. I would like to make one comment about a couple of things that were addressed earlier with the other panelists, especially with regarding the trailers. I recently was listening to a podcast and the group was talking about how they use closed captioning when watching movies because of the ways that movies are recorded now, that sometimes the dialogue is difficult to hear, and they use that closed captioning as a tool, even though that they are sighted. And the comment as well about the truck drivers. I spoke with a Lyft driver not too long ago, and how he used audio description through Netflix to listen to movies while he was doing his work. And I just think that, accessibility obviously is our biggest interest, but at the same time, people are reading dialogue from movies through closed captioning now. People are, reading transcripts of podcasts now instead of listening to it. So having the diversity, I think, is just a good thing overall. And I think that we're going to find very quickly that other people besides us are going to enjoy these descriptions of these graphic novels. As for best practices for me, I would say, first and foremost, follow your, your interests, your desire. If I never wrote down my ideas, Unseen would have never been made. And so I think just, having the confidence to sit down and say, even though I'm not a writer, if that's, kind of mentally where you're at, I'm just going to write this down and play. I'm going to explore these creative ideas that I have and see what takes shape. This stuff can't necessarily work in a bubble. So once you do share and you feel that you have something that is interesting, I strongly recommend sharing it with people, whether it's, close friends that you trust, or family, or spouse, or even online with strangers, if that's something that you feel confident in doing, and getting some feedback, building on that idea. And then from there, if you can get people excited about your idea, which is exactly what I did with Unseen, I started getting people involved in the project. And the more people I had, the more skill sets that were brought to the table to get this vision created and out into the world. And slowly but surely, it started to take shape. It was a very organic thing. I used very little money, but a whole lot of favors to get this to happen. As I mentioned earlier, I am a magician. You can check me out at chadallenmagic.com. And the reason I say that is because, magicians are performers. They have, and sometimes they have wonderful voices. So as a member of the Magic Castle and the Academy of Magical Arts in Hollywood, California, I would ask the magicians of voices that I liked the most. And many of them ended up being performers in my comics. So Max Maven, for example, was Dr. Magnus. My friend Misty Lee, who's a female magician, she played Afsana. Vanessa Stewart, who is married to French Stewart. She's a very successful actor in her own right. And my wife went to school with her, so she did all the wonderful narrations in the project. We found relationships with a sound studio that was willing to, basically give us the space because of our relationships and our friendships and our network, along with the, the prospect of us being able to have that on exhibit at the museum. But I think, the most important thing is to keep going. I said that I started this project in 2015. It's 2021 now. It still has legs. It's still evolving. It's still growing. And I think a lot of that has to do with just, keep putting things out there. I hope that answered your question, but if you want me to clarify anything else, I'd be happy to as well.
No, I think that's good. I think we can definitely glean some best practices from that. Emily, real quick, I just want to know, do we have any questions in the Q&A just so I could keep track of that?
Yes, we do have a few. We have
Okay,
about
okay.
4. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I want to make sure we get this in. Rick, quickly, do you have some thoughts on best practices as well? Because Chad was sort of from the creator point of view. I was wondering what you think about best practices. You there, Rick? You're on mute if you're speaking.
Let's
You.
see.
He's
There you go.
unmuted now. Go ahead,
Great.
Rick.
Okay, that takes me a while to get to that, so thank you for doing that for me. And then I got to turn off the screen reader and all that kind of stuff. Okay. I think the most important best practice is to respect the audience. And by that, I mean, whatever method you use and whatever principles you follow in providing a comparable experience for a blind consumer, always be conscious not to insult them, talk down to them, assume that they don't have the capacity or that you need to explain things that can be otherwise understood. I think the most common failure in audio description in general on the part of people providing the service is that they don't become familiar with what a blind person would do without description. How well can you do without it? There are many programs you can follow and understand and whatever, and blind people know. We've been watching TV and films long before description came around. And the best describers are those that really get a sense for what you can do with your by listening and by paying attention and drawing conclusions from what you hear. And so there's no need to duplicate or be redundant in whatever you're doing. So I think, again, best practice, don't be condescending, don't talk down to, don't assume that because a person is blind, they're not going to understand. Instead, try to become aware of what would it be impossible for a blind person to know just by what they hear. And so how does that apply to comics? Well, I would start with the standard audio description practice of reading the text that is on the page, whether digital or analog. So reading, as we say in television and film, reading all the text on screen is a must because someone's not going to know it's there, unless, of course, a narrator in the program on TV says it. But in the case of comic books, you got to get all the text. Beyond that, you've got to get the core elements of who's doing what and in what context, what environment, right? Just the nuts and bolts of what's happening. And then what I would call the aesthetic, the artistic flourish, a little more subjective detail that suggests more about the characters and more about the story that isn't spelled out. But you got to do all that with the idea that you can dispense with any attempt to help the blind person understand the story. That's not what you're trying to do. And I as a blind person, and a lot of the research that we did in 2013 through 15, confirmed that a lot of blind people feel the same way, particularly people that have been blind for a long time. It's irritating to me for people to be telling me something that I can tell already by paying attention. So I think that's the most important best practice.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Charity. So you describe, you guys really focus a lot on videos, but I'm wondering specifically, what role can you describe play and the crowd, just the audience sort of thing, right? That you guys kind of focus on.
Right.
Yeah. How can you describe play a role in this, and specifically for comics? Yeah.
I think Rick is right here on the money. That one of the things, that I teach new describers, which are going to have a lot in common with comic creators who are going, who are just starting out, who are well-intentioned and want to be helpful, to avoid the pitfalls of, overdoing, over-explaining, like just over. And most of our really good describers are either TVIs, one, because TVIs are amazing people and they have a lot of experience being allies and understanding what their students need. But the big thing about them is that they're very clear on their audience, right? They know when they get a video who is going to be viewing it. and exactly what educational content needs to be highlighted, and the things that can be sort of dropped away. And I would say that right now, with this as a new medium, that anybody who's starting off with this, even though right now it's a little frontier, maybe Wild West, like what is it going to be, how is it going to be done, what are the standards going to be, that putting out some very clear and basic guidance is from the get-go, the things that we already know, it should be broadcast liberally, so that people who are well-intentioned can create good content. And the other best practice that I think comes from you described is inclusion. Because we describe things that aren't normally described, things that are not big budget, things that are not sort of mainstream. As we build this community around comics and graphic novels, that we remember to be inclusive, that we include quirky voices and voices with accents, and that absolutely that the blind community should be first and in front of creating and editing and and doing everything with regards to this medium. That we cannot make this accessible if we do not include the blind and vision impaired community, but we also need to be including the queer community. We need to be including people who are, end up kind of on the fringe if we only think about DC, if we only think about Marvel. That there's lots of graphic talent and comic book creation that's done by the queer community, by the kink community, and by other communities that really also need to be described.
Thank you. I love that. I love that. Perfect. We can go to some of the questions because I think, Emily, you said we had about 4. So let's see what we got.
Yeah, we have a few more coming in too. So we'll see how
cool.
many we can get to. If each individual's experience with blindness or low vision is unique, then how can we think about creating a cohesive kind of accessible audio format? What sort of elements would give us a sliding scale of accessibility? For example, rather than a one-size-fits-all experience.
Anybody want to take that? Does that sound like anybody has something to say about that specifically?
Close button.
I think I hear Rick.
Looks like Chad is jumping in, actually.
Chad? Okay.
Yeah, I would just like to say, I think that the way technology is moving so fast, we are gifted with new innovations and abilities on a regular basis. So yes, I think that, there are certainly fundamentals that need to be put in place, but if it's too rigid of an idea, then it doesn't necessarily lead for, new innovations to come in. And I think that, my experience, for example, with accessing magic books has been very difficult because very few of them are, in an accessible format. But now with the artificial intelligence that's on the phones, a lot of those image-based documents that were once inaccessible are now accessible. So I think it's good to talk about it. I think it's good to understand the likes and the dislikes. And, there are definitely some rules not to break as far as how audio description should function. But at the same time, I think that it's a moving target because just the way technology evolves.
And if I can add to that, this is Wale. I think that there is a lot of room to grow here. And I think, my high level answer is that the only way for us to find out is to, keep making audio description and keep getting feedback from the community as much as possible. I think it would be, and maybe there is a place for this, but I think it would be interesting for a website where folks can rate the audio descriptions of different, movies or TV shows. But to add to one more thing about that is an idea from an experience I had. There's this dance company called Kinetic Light. And for their performance, which is highly visual and has zero dialogue, they created multiple audio description tracks, some of which were very much telling you what you were seeing specifically in non-metaphoric ways. Some were a bit more metaphoric, and some were like a story. And then there was one track, I think, that was just the sounds amplified. So there's maybe a way to, maybe make multiple audio description tracks to fit, a few different groups' needs.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I was making a note. That's Automance is the name of their technology. And this is, the whole idea behind technology is that you can be more inclusive and just create more choice. And that to me is a perfect example of that. So I'm glad you raised it.
What is that called?
Automance is the name of their technology. Yeah, cool. You can check it out on readmymind.com. Just letting you know.
Will do.
Emily, you want to go to the next one?
Sure. If a superhero is given an actor's voice, does every story thereafter have to have the same actor in order to maintain characteristics similar to how you'd want a similar illustrator for a comic series?
I want to go to Rick for that one, because that's something that happens within audio description right now in movies and shows. Rick, you want to talk about that one?
All day long. Yes, sir. That in general, the feedback from blind consumers, and I love the question, by the way, that was asked, the last question, about, since you have varying opinions, and there was a lot of good research done by the American Foundation for the Blind about people, how a person's blindness, their relationship to it, and how that impacts their opinions about description. And I got to the point where I could look at results of surveys, questions that people would have answered on a questionnaire, and then I could tell you, this person been blind a short line, or they've seen very little description, or they've been blind a really long time, or whatever. You can tell by people's opinions, those kinds of things. And so we try to play what we call play it down the middle. There are people like me who are minimalists. We like, just give me what I absolutely need to have description kind of people, versus usually the newly blind want fill in. They'll even say, fill in every possible nook and cranny and gap that you can in between the dialogue with as much description as you can get, right? And you got to, in a flat one-dimensional technology world, you've got to, in your script, in your plan, kind of play, I say, down the middle, give some to these and some to those. Now technology, as we've just talking about, is wonderful. That the more that technology offers us multiple tracks, I love that is a solution. I think it's a really good way to go. To answer the current question, I'd say that the research that I've seen, most consumers do prefer to keep the same voice, particularly when you're voicing, subtitles and doing character voices and things like that, keep the same voices for the same people, because it can be confusing if it's shifting. On the other hand, a lot of people liked what we did with Blind Justice on ABC, where we did male voice for one episode, then a female for the other. We had the same two people, but we alternated back and forth between the two, and a lot of favorable response. So you're going to get a diverse opinion. I think it is a good practice, though, to keep the same voice for the same program, or the same voice for the same characters, to try to have consistency over a series or over, seasons and seasons. I think it does add a certain level of familiarity and consistency for people that maybe aren't as dedicated, hardcore, watching every single thing or whatever. They kind of know what they're hearing. And you know how it is. A sighted person can see a little glimpse of a show that they know really whatever, and they'll see familiar images, and they know right away, oh, that's Grace and Frankie or whatever it is. And I think you can give a blind person that kind of experience if they hear the audio or a voice and know, oh, that's probably what that is. So I think it's a good practice. I don't think any of the rules or principles of description are one size fits all for every scenario. I think you have to be flexible. You have to be creative if you're going to do a great job. But in general, I think it's good practice.
Emily, you want to jump to the next one?
Can do.
Yeah.
As a sighted person, I wonder how I can learn more about the right balance between enough description and the right kind of description versus too little. And there were a couple different folks who were just sighted people wanting to get more involved. So just looking for resources and ideas to learn how to dive in, which is exciting.
Great. I think we should go to Charity for that one. Start at least. Charity, you want to start with that question?
Absolutely, absolutely. If you, when I teach audio description, and sometimes that's as short as an hour long, Zoom webinar, and sometimes it's very in depth and it, covers a week or so. There are different ways to handle it, but if you are looking to translate comics from an audio description standpoint, there are going to be other methods, throughout the day. I would really recommend that you come over to Udescribe, and I will help you, because it takes about an hour and a half to do your first audio description. It takes a while, and the people who get good at it, do more than 10, because you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to need feedback on it. And so that is a good place to practice and get feedback. And our viewers they give a star rating, and then they also tell you if it's overdescribed or underdescribed, or your mic isn't clear enough, or you don't speak loudly enough for the descriptions, even with the ducking feature, right? Like, you can get some very good feedback on an audio description way, just by practicing, and it's a good place to practice, right? So there are other places and other ways to do it, of course, but the Udescribe is free. It is available right now, and if you want a tutorial, we can start next week.
I think you cut off that last part, at least for me, cut off, Charity.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It's free. And if you contact me, cpc@ski.org, I will hook you up with very basic audio description techniques. We at Udescribe have a YouTube channel where we have videos. There are 8 of them that walk you through very basic audio description do's and don'ts. It can be really easy to get started.
Excellent. Thank you, Charity.
And sort of a related question for folks wanting to dive in. Somebody posed that they have a lot of audio description and voice acting experience, but they're wondering if we know of any opportunities for diving into audio description for comics and graphic novels. And that might actually be a question that's more for our attendees today. If any publishers are looking to sync up, this is why we're sharing the directory and we're using the Facebook group. But does anybody have any comments on that specifically?
I don't know if this has been mentioned, but I just wanted to shout out the audio description discussion group on Facebook. There's a lot going on there, and people can get a lot of useful information.
Were those the only questions, or?
There are more,
okay.
And we have 4 minutes left. So
Yeah.
Up to you how you want to run it.
You must take one more, and then we'll see if it's a quick one, and then we can close it out.
Sure, sounds good. How about I'll just summarize it. How do we feel about the the computer synthesized voice versus voice actor?
That is not a quick one.
Yeah. I was doing the quick version of it.
Okay, I'm gonna choose the person here. I'm gonna go to Wale. Wale, what are your thoughts as a consumer in terms of and specifically, we're talking about for comics. So I'm curious.
For comic books, okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it out there that I have a bias. I am not a fan of TTS for audio description. I do know that maybe it has its use cases, but I think the comic book answer would be the same answer for all of the content I consume. which is I prefer a human voice. There's something about the delivery, the inflection, that, you know, even the most robust TTSs, I find them to be a little monotone. And while they have advanced and they do sound great, and I use screen readers every day, I prefer my audio description to be read by a human.
Is there anybody who wants to quickly talk about the opposite point of view?
I would. Oh, not the necessarily the opposite point of view. Sorry.
Okay. Anyone have the opposite? If not, then Chad, go ahead quickly.
Okay. I would just want to say, I think the goal, you know, of any description or any storytelling experience is immersion. So if it immerses you into the story, it's a good thing. If it takes you out of the story, then it's bad. So if there's multiple actors performing, that might take you out even for a moment to adjust to the new person. The synthetic speech may not feel intimate enough. And I think that that is a problem when the purpose of storytelling, I would assume, is primarily entertainment.
Excellent. Chad, real quickly, where can folks on social media, where can they learn more about you?
Okay. All my magic stuff is done through chadallenmagic.com. Most of my social media on Twitter is also at chadallenmagic. But if you're specifically interested in the Unseen Project, my recommendation would be to go to unseencomic.com. It's all singular, all one word, unseencomic.com. And that'll have the information about the Exploratorium, the exhibit. There'll be a sample audio of the Unseen experience. And then any future events that are taking place would be listed there on that website.
Wale, same question.
I can present Zoom.us has new window. Opposite viewpoint.
Wale?
Yep. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and my handle is @corruptedsite. That's site as in SIGHT, @corruptedsite.
Rick Boggs, where can folks learn more about you, Audio Eyes, etc.?
Audioeyes.com. AUDIOEYES. Audioeyes.com. You can. There are forms there to contact us. There's contact information if you want to talk. I just. By the way, did want to. Sorry about my screen reader there. I did want to say I couldn't get the mute. I'm so slow with the screen reader on the platform. But the opposite viewpoint that you were looking for, I can tell you this: if I was doing a comic, and it was futuristic and it was non-human, you know, primary odd characters, if it was very, let's say, space based or something like The Expanse or like Star Trek or something, if there were creatures, if it was, you know, what's it called, Star Wars, if you're, you know, that kind of thing, I could definitely see how deliberately incorporating a synthetic voice could contribute to the appropriate aesthetic of the program. So I just want to say there are cases in which I think it could add to the program, but in general, I have the same opinion as anyone else. So anyway, Rick Boggs, you can get me at audioeyes.com or rickboggs.com, RICKBOGGS.com.
Fantastic point, sir. Charity.
I just want to say thank you so much to Thomas. This is one of the nicest panels I've ever been on, and I was very intimidated. Everybody here is an audio description heavy hitter, and I thought I would have nothing to say, and I'm so grateful with the thoughtfulness of your questions and really including me. Thank you so much. And you can find You Describe at YOU, and then describe, and of course I'll probably spell it wrong, DESCRIBE.org. And I'm available at cpc@ski.org. C as in charity, P as in pitcher, C as in Cooper, @ski.org.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much for this. My name is Thomas Reed. Again, my podcast, Read My Mind Radio, wherever you get podcasts, just spell it correctly. It's R to the EID, like my last name, and I'm at TSREID on Twitter. Emily, take it away. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, everybody.
Thank you
so much, Thomas,
thanks, everyone,
for moderating. Thank you to all of our panelists. We are now going to have a brief break until 11 a.m. You can just walk away from the computer. You don't need to move any different Zoom link. You're going to just stay here. We're going to have some light music playing, and we will see you back at 11. And our panelists will be looking for you and promoting you to panelists. So make sure that your name is visible for our next panel. Thank you all. See you at 11 Pacific time.